Sarah's marriage crumbled under the weight of her husband's unreasonable demands and his family's expectations. Pressured to quit her job and become a full-time caretaker for her in-laws, she found herself trapped in a life she never wanted. When her husband presented divorce papers as a threat, Sarah saw an opportunity for escape. Little did he know, this moment would become the catalyst for Sarah's unexpected transformation and the beginning of her journey to reclaim control of her life.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Drama of Destiny. This story we're about to tell has a shocking twist beyond your imagination. First, let's get started.
If things had gone as planned, I would have been entering my second year of marriage this year. But recently, just as we were about to hit the 2-year mark, I got divorced. The reason was that my husband and I couldn't agree on many things, especially our different views on what a wife should be. Even before we got married, he was always nagging me to quit my jobs once we tied the knot. However, he had just switched jobs before the wedding, and his salary was low, leaving us in a state where we barely got by. So I always told him I would quit once we could manage on his salary alone. Despite this, we often ended up arguing about it after getting married. Every time, he seemed to agree, and I believed he would eventually understand. I also thought he would work harder to raise his salary if he wanted me to quit so badly. But in the first year of our marriage, his salary didn't change, and he kept insisting I quit, which started to irritate me. By the way, the reason my husband wants me to quit so badly is that he wants me to take care of his mom. My Mill isn't bedridden or in need of care. She works part-time and lives on her own. But my husband wants me to take care of all the housework at his mom's place. Basically, he wants to show off. Look, I have a wife who obeys me and takes care of my mom, and he especially wants to show off to his mom. So, my husband is most concerned about keeping his mom happy. But do you think that's something I can agree to? I don't see the point in taking care of someone who doesn't need it. Naturally, I didn't quit my job, and I didn't obey my husband either. I thought, if really wanted me to quit my job, then he should get a raise. However, at some point, when I visited my in-laws' house, my Mill started bossing me around. And she was lounging around, watching TV, eating snacks. She'd tell me to get my Phil's golf bag ready or buy a new shower head for the garden hose. Is that really a job for a daughter-in-law who doesn't even live with them? The more time passed, the more brazen she became, expecting me to anticipate her needs and nagging if I didn't. She even expected me to know matters relating to only her family, which I couldn't possibly know, and complained when I didn't. For instance, I had no way of knowing my Phil's travel schedule, but she scolded me for not being prepared. And then, when I complained to my husband about it after I got home, he somehow started blaming me too. Moreover, he insulted and criticized me, saying things like, "Don't embarrass me," and "You're an inconsiderate wife." It was as if I was the only one at fault for not quitting my job and not being able to take care of everything my in-laws were doing. Eventually, I noticed that my husband started saying things like wanting to make life easier for his parents, and he was trying to use me to achieve that. And as a tool to make things easier for his parents, he was trying to use me until I was worn out. When I realized this, my distrust towards my husband grew stronger, and I couldn't stand it anymore. He wasn't like this when we first got married. It seems I couldn't see his true nature at all. So I decided to talk to him. I decided to express all my current dissatisfaction. I told him, "I didn't marry you to take care of your parents." The discussion lasted until midnight, and I think I was crying while talking by the end. My husband apologized, saying, "I didn't mean it that way," so I thought he understood. Feeling hopeful for improvement, I went to sleep peacefully. However, the next night my husband said, "I just wanted you to be kinder to my parents." Hearing that, I realized he hadn't understood me at all. Or maybe he understood but still wanted to impose his will. Regardless, I decided to listen to his side of the story first. He said, "I didn't mean for you to put my parents first. I just wanted you to show more respect and meet their expectations." Feeling a bit heavy-hearted, I responded, "So you think I haven't been doing that? Will nothing satisfy you unless I center my life around your parents?" My husband got angry, saying, "That's not it. Can't you just listen to me?" Then he started rummaging through his bag and suddenly showed me a blank divorce paper. He said, "If you can't get along with my parents, you're not cut out for marriage," and began signing the paper. He added, Marriage is about family bonds. You should know that. But then, as I watched my husband take his time filling out the document, I retorted, "But don't you think you've been neglecting my parents quite a bit?" He looked puzzled and said, "It's different with a husband's parents and a wife's parents." Hearing that, I felt disappointed and started to cry. My husband misinterpreted my tears. He said, "I didn't really want to do this, but there's no choice. Think it over," and left the room. Left alone, I became extremely calm. As a result, I felt more than just losing my affection for my selfish husband. I felt hollowed out. I filled out my part of the divorce paper in half the time it took him. The next day, pretending nothing had happened, I saw him off to work as usual. No, it wasn't as usual. In fact, he looked smug, thinking he had won. But I didn't care. I took a day off work and went to my parents' place. My parents lived about 20 minutes away, so I got there quickly. There, I told my parents about the divorce and asked them to sign as witnesses. Of course, they were surprised and asked about the circumstances. However, even without going into so much detail, my parents understood after just a short explanation. That's because, in reality, I've often gone back to my parents' houses to complain about my husband. They already knew our marriage wasn't going well. My parents were angry at first, but when they saw how determined I was, they said nothing more. We didn't have any kids, and these days, having a divorce isn't such a big deal. We had planned to start a family once we saved $30,000, but with my husband's low salary, we only had $20,000 saved. Who would have thought that plan would come in handy in such a way, saved by my husband's low salary? How ironic. But there's no use complaining now. I submitted the completed divorce papers to the city hall. By the way, there wasn't even a hint of regret from him. He probably didn't think I'd actually go through with it. I knew he used the divorce papers to threaten and control me. I guess he thought that if he brought up divorce, I would cry and fully comply with my husband. Maybe I might even quit my jobs and be loyal to his mother. What a foolish husband. Well, now he's my ex-husband. I didn't tell my husband I submitted the papers right away, in case he tries to cancel it before the divorce was finalized. It would be unbearable if he tries to cancel it without my consent. So I kept quiet about the divorce. If I had told him I actually submitted the papers, he might have kicked me out of the house right away, and the conversation would have been too troublesome. So I lived with him under the same roof while searching for a new place. Since our current place was rented under his name, it made sense for me to leave. If he loved his mother so much, he should have lived with her from the beginning, right? Well, it's really not important now. As for the things to take with me when moving, I didn't have that much stuff. The only thing I had a lot of was books, so I spent 2 days sorting through them after the divorce. Seeing me doing that, my husband said, "Cleaning up? Nice. I always thought you had too many books." From his tone, he probably thought I was reflecting on things and starting to take care of the houses. But the truth is, I was cleaning up something much bigger, though I didn't bother to say that at the time. It was quite annoying that my husband seemed pleased watching me do this, thinking I was doing it for him. I wasn't cleaning up because he told me to or because I had a change of heart about taking care of the house. But I couldn't really say anything, so I just kept avoiding my overly cheerful husband. I turned down his dinner invitations and his advances in the bedroom, even sleeping on the couch. Watching my husband's behavior, I realized he must have thought the divorce papers were just a bluff. He had no idea I had actually submitted the papers, and we were now legally strangers. Using this to my advantage, I continued preparing to move out without him suspecting a thing. Even though the process was complicated and I thought I'd get caught, I managed to keep it a secret and found it amusing. Once I had sorted out my books and packed my clothes, valuables, and the appliances I bought, it was time to leave. I planned to move out on a day he was working and I had off, so I contacted my sister, who I had asked for help earlier. The reason I asked my sister was because her boyfriend had a large car. On the day, my sister, her boyfriend, and his brother helped me move. In less than 2 hours, everything was packed, and we finished the move by midday. I paid my sister for the moving help and finally decided to tell my husband about the divorce. Since divorce involves the family, I thought just telling my husband wouldn't be enough. So, I invited both families to a small dinner that evening, saying I had something important to discuss. I told him that there was something important I needed to discuss. But my husband seemed completely clueless about what the conversation would be about. Without revealing the truth, I booked a private room at a small restaurant and asked them to come. That evening, my very annoyed Mill, who was called out unexpectedly, arrived with my fill. After that, he kept nagging me about something else, but as soon as my parents arrived, his attitude changed completely. Then, for some reason, my Mill told me, "Go ahead, greet your parents," which annoyed me. So, I replied, "I've already greeted them," and she got upset again. Then, because my ex-husband was running late due to work, we decided to start the dinner without him. My parents, who knew the truth, were extremely tense and silent, like at a funeral. Meanwhile, my in-laws, who didn't know anything, tried hard to make conversation with my parents, only to be brushed off and became flustered each time. Eventually, I got a text from my Mill, who had gone to the bathroom complaining, "What's with your parents' attitude?" Well, I couldn't tell her yet that she was the main cause of their attitude. But when my ex-husband finally arrived, I decided to bring up the important topic with everyone. Calmly, I just stated the facts. First, that my husband and I had discussed our differences. As a result, he gave me a signed divorce paper and told me to think it over. So, I thought about it carefully, filled out my section, submitted it to the office, and it has already been processed. Today, I've already moved my things out of the house, and I'm formally informing everyone that I'm breaking things off with my ex-husband. Finally, I mentioned that I want half of the money we saved together, as it's joint property. I left all the furniture and appliances we bought together at the house as his property. My ex-husband and his parents were shocked, their mouths hanging open like they couldn't believe it. But my Phil was the first to come to his senses and started questioning me, which gradually brought everyone else back to reality. They all started complaining to me, but I couldn't really understand what my Mill was saying. She seemed so confused that her English wasn't coherent, and her sentences were all over the place. So, I decided to ignore her comments for now and focus on talking to my ex-husband, the main person involved. Then he started yelling, "That was just a little marital spat, and you're divorcing me in such a sneaky way." But I stood firm and said clearly, "But you were the one who brought the divorce papers, right?" So, I argued that I didn't do anything underhanded and that I actually divorced him in the proper way. But he countered, "You should have known it was a lie. I can't believe you decided to divorce on your own." Well, sure, I thought it was a lie, but how could I know it wasn't true? When someone hands over divorce papers, you'd normally think that means they want a divorce, right? So, I didn't decide on my own, I just agreed with his intention to divorce. At least on the surface. So, when I calmly made my point, he couldn't say a word and fell silent. But it didn't seem like he was giving up on convincing me. After a brief silence, he suddenly started crying. He said that since we got married, we've been drifting apart, and that he felt lonely because I didn't understand him. He wanted more time together, and for me to stay home more, but I didn't quit my jobs when he asked me to. He wanted kids, but I refused, and he wanted me to do more housework, not just him. Crying, he started complaining about whatever he wanted. Seeing that, I started to feel a bit nauseous. I mean, he's making it sound like it's all my fault, and that he's been the victim, patiently enduring everything, right? But I had my reasons, so I calmly decided to respond to everything my husband said. First, he mentioned that we had been drifting apart, or that he wanted more time together, but we definitely had more time together than before we got married. But my husband kept saying things like, "I'm tired, let me sleep," or "I don't want to go out. I don't feel like doing anything." So, when he said he felt lonely or whatever, it was frustrating, especially since we had talked endlessly about quitting my job, right? He kept saying I should do more housework, but we had agreed to split the chores before getting married. Yet, he used being tired as an excuse to gradually stop doing any housework, leaving most of it to me. As for what housework he did, what was it? Maybe bringing in the laundry on his day off and making his own coffee? We talked about having kids over and over again, didn't we? It was all about waiting for his salary to go up. Even saving $30,000 would have been fine. But that wasn't possible with our financial situation. He insisted I quit my job despite his low salary that didn't even allow us to save enough. So what's with that reasoning? Plus, I thought he was missing the main point he was complaining about, so I made sure to say it. Actually, that's not your real complaint, is it? You've always been upset because I didn't become a maid for your family, right? Because I didn't make things easier for your mom. Isn't that right? Then, my husband started to panic for some reason and tried to change the subjects. He even said, "Hey, we've only been married for 2 years. Don't ruin it over something so trivial." When I heard that, I couldn't believe he thought this argument was trivial, so I made a pretty annoyed face, and it seemed to hit a nerve with him. He suddenly switched from trying to play the victim to yelling at me, almost threatening. And what did he say? Something typically short-sighted of him. "If you can just file for divorce like this, then I'll go ahead and file for marriage by myself." Then, he actually tried to leave the room, so I calmly told him, "What are you planning to do about my signature? I'm not signing, no way." Besides, the divorce has already been finalized by the court. He looked stunned, forgetting his anger, like he had no idea what to do next. So, I explained everything to him and told him there was hardly any other option besides divorce. I also told him that if he didn't want a divorce, he'll have to take it to court again. Of course, my husband and his parents started making a fuss again, but it was my dad who quieted them down. He spoke in a calm, low voice. "My daughter is an adult now and can make her own decisions about her life. The same goes for you, Noah. So why should parents block the path their grown-up children choose?" This made my ex-husband's parents go silent. Maybe they were embarrassed. My Mill, with tears in her eyes, apologized to me, saying, "I've been too dependent on you. I'm sorry." Well, even so, I can't forget the mean look on her face when she made me help out. So, while the situation had somewhat calmed down, my ex-husband still looked dissatisfied. It seems my dad noticed my ex-husband's mood. He suggested we involve a lawyer from here on. The mention of a lawyer seemed to make my ex-husband a bit nervous. He looked surprised and stared at my dad. But my dad, not looking away from my ex-husband, said straight to his face, "Noah, I trusted you to make my daughter happy when I let her marry you. But now..." Then, my dad choked on his words and looked down. My husband was flustered, even I was a bit shaken. And that's how our turbulent dinner ended, but I wonder if my dad's final words had an effect. In the end, without involving a lawyer, I received the full amount of our savings as alimony, instead of just half. I left most of the furniture behind, so it probably balances out. Now, I live alone in an apartment, and my ex-husband sometimes contacts me wanting to get back together. But I have no intention of getting back together. I consider him as just someone from my past since we're divorced. Looking back, maybe it was an amicable divorce after all. It's a bit ironic that it was all thanks to my ex-husband's foolishness. It's strange to expect your wife to take care of your parents instead of doing it yourself, right? If you want to care for your parents, you should do it yourself. And on top of that, he didn't care about his wife at all. I really think my ex-husband was short-sighted. He probably only ever thought about himself. But seeing how my dad's words affected him, maybe he can change. He did originally have a kind heart that wanted to take care of his parents. If he can direct that kindness not just to one area but to those around him, I think he would be able to change. As long as he doesn't try to be kind just for appearances or think hypocritically. But only he knows what he'll do from here. After all, he was the one who filed for divorce. In any case, I learned the hard way that divorce papers aren't something you use to threaten someone. See you in the next video. Thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching the video until the end. If you enjoyed the story, please give it a like. If you're interested in other stories, please subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much.